All right. You told me about the autumn olives. What other shrubs have you got?
Okay, get off track. The autumn olive is one. American bittersweet's another shrub I planted. It's a running vine. It makes a berry about like a double-aught buckshot, and it'll stay on that bush until March. It'll drop in March. I've got a lot of those planted everywhere. I've got a lot of native honeysuckle. I've planted probably 10,000 honeysuckle plants in specific locations where I didn't have any. Um, I planted, gosh, I planted grapevines. I planted muscadine vines.
I noticed the honeysuckle you had baskets are around
I,
it.
I started fertilizing honeysuckle when it was on the ground, just by fertilizing. What I found out is the deer are going to go to where it's fertilized because it's the sweetest. And they'll eat it down to the ground, and they'll keep eating it down to the ground, and it won't ever produce a leaf, and it'll eventually die. So I started out making little square boxes about 12 inches tall and putting it over the top of the honeysuckle and fertilizing them, so that the deer could only eat what grew through the cages. And I found out pretty soon the honeysuckle would grow through that 12-inch cage in a hurry. So I started making round cages, 18 to 24 inches round, with 5-foot 2x4 welded wire, and putting it around a honeysuckle, staking it down with iron stakes, and then fertilizing it really well. It'll grow up inside that 2x4 welded wire, and when it reaches the top, it opens up and blooms over like an umbrella. The deer can eat all they can reach, but they can't. There'll always be leaves on the top of that umbrella and inside that cage that the deer can't eat. So there'll always be enough leaves to keep that honeysuckle growing. I've got cages like that scattered all over the property.
What about you were telling me about the Japanese
Japanese persimmons.
persimmons? Yes.
Japanese persimmons are a real treat for deer. Everybody's aware that deer eat native persimmons when they ripen, get sweet. They're astringent before then. Japanese persimmons are in two different groups. One group is astringent like a native persimmon until it gets ripe. The other group is non-astringent. Most of mine I've got are non-astringent. You can pick a green one and bite it and it'll still be sweet. When it gets ripe, one type looks just like a huge plum, about 2 inches in diameter and about 2.5 inches long. And when you peel the skin back on it and taste of the fruit, it is sweeter than sugar. The deer love it. The other type that's astringent till it ripens, it's shaped like a tomato. It's about as big as a tomato. When it gets ripe, it is also sweet, but it's not as sweet as the other. I've probably got 500 Japanese persimmon trees planted all over. I've planted chestnut trees. I got some of the new Auburn developed chestnut 1, 2s, and 3s because of different drop times. I've got pawpaw trees. Some people don't know what a pawpaw tree is. Most of the pawpaw trees were cut out of this country years ago. They make a fruit like a banana. It's about 4 inches long and it's shaped just like a banana. When it ripens, it smells just like banana custard. When it hits the ground, the deer love them. I've planted a lot of thornless honey locusts. The honey locust bean is a delicacy to the deer. It's sweet and they love it. I've planted several hundred thornless honey locust trees all over this place to make supplemental natural food for my food that I'm providing my deer. I mentioned pear and apple and crab apple and pawpaws.
You got yes, chestnuts.
Chestnuts, mayhaws. Mayhaws are some I planted. Mayhaw makes a little berry about like a big marble. It's an apple that actually, and it ripens in May. It's a little bit astringent, but the deer love them. And I've also got a lot of native hawthorn trees. They're about 15 varieties of hawthorns. They make a berry that stays on the tree until midwinter. They turn right and they fall off. The deer and turkeys love them. I've planted several thousand of those.
I think you started planting trees roughly 30 years ago, and then you fenced the place about 15 years ago.
I started planting trees to provide food 30 years ago. I had in the back of my mind I wanted to fence it. A couple of incidents happened between me and the neighbors back in 97, 98 that encouraged me to build a fence. I didn't stop planting. I continued to plant and even got more aggressive with my planting and my harvesting after I got the fence up. One of the greatest dangers and the least understood problem when you put an enclosure around deer is you have got to control the deer population. And if you don't, the deer will eat themselves out of house and home. You'll have a browse line where there's no leaf on any plant as high as a deer can reach. When you get to that point, you have destroyed your habitat. If you take all the deer off and let the habitat come back, most of it won't come back because it's been stunted. It'll die. If you keep your deer population below your food supply, you'll always have plenty of food supply, even in dry weather. On this property, we can take 100 does and fawns a year and about 20 bucks a year. Of that 20 bucks, 8 or 10 of them would be big trophy bucks. The other 8 or 9 or 10 would be bucks that have mismatched horns. One big horn on one side and a small one on the other. A lot of the reason for that is when these bucks get 8, 9 years old and they get it to a fight, they don't play. They fight till the death. And every year after season, we'll find 4 or 5 nice bucks that'll have a corn hole in the chest to the heart, or one through the eye to the brain. They just kill each other. We try not to take a deer that's less than 5.5 years old. Mature here don't fully mature until they're 7.5 years old. Our buck deer in the fall and bow season will average 260 pounds. There'll be a few 300s and a few 275s and 280s. 260 is a good average weight in the fall. Our does 150 to 160 pounds without fawns. With fawns, they'll be down about 20 pounds. I trap every year in February. This past year, I had a trapper came in, same trapper, he caught 8 bobcats and 8 coyotes, and my doe to fawn ratio today is 1.8 fawns per doe. The year before last, I didn't trap. My fawn to doe ratio was 1.1. The coyotes, cats took care of the rest of it.
What about